Okay, welcome to our training seminar about inviting and retaining guests. It's important for us to probably shift gears a little bit in relation to how we call the people that come to the church. And we're trying to change that name of visitors to guests. Because we all want, like guests, we don't want an unexpected visitor, but we do love to have guests, be it in our home or be it here at the church. Before we delve into the seminar, I'd like to just share with you a little icebreaker, a little anecdote. Johnny's mother looked out at the window and noticed that Johnny was playing with a cat, with a cat. The cat was sitting there very attentively to Johnny preaching, and later she heard a meowing and a hissing. So she ran out to see in the open window there to see what was going on, and she saw that Johnny was baptizing the cat in a little tub of water. She called out, "Johnny, stop that. The cat's afraid of water." Johnny looked up and said, well, he should have thought about that before joining my church. It's interesting that we love to have people come in, but we sometimes trying to force them to do things that they're not ready for. So in our seminar, we like to get people ready for what might have come next in their next step as they come to church. So we're going to have a word of prayer, and we'll get right into our seminar. Precious Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity that you give us as we start to look in opportunities that you give us to be able to invite others to the church, and as they come to visit us, we want to keep them also. We want to have them join us again and have repeat visits. So we pray, dear God, that you may help us to understand these different concepts and how important it is for us to do our part so that others can benefit of knowing Jesus and coming to his house to rejoice together as your people. We thank you and we love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, let's see if we get this. Do I have this on? It's on. I need to put it in some other place. There we go. Can we all read that?
Yeah.
Okay. Inviting. I guess my first question for us all, and this will be a little part about the interactive part of our seminar. Why is it important to invite people to the church? Why do you think it's important to invite people to the church? Not everyone speak at the same time.
Do you want
Jesus wants
Hmm?
Where Jesus wants us.
Jesus wants us. Jesus wants us to invite others to the church. Great.
But he wants us in his church also.
Say again?
He wants us in his church.
Okay. Any other ideas? Why is it important for us to invite people to the church?
So they feel welcome.
So they feel welcome?
When you have good news, you want to share it.
You have good news, you want to share it?
Usually you invite people to something that they might not know about. So maybe they don't know.
Okay. So if it's so important for us to invite people to the church, guess my next question is, why aren't people inviting?
We're afraid to tell us no.
We're afraid to tell us no.
We're
Yeah.
We're afraid they'll tell us.
Okay? So we're concerned that we invite people, but they will tell us no. And that makes us feel rejected. What else is another reason why people are not inviting?
Ellie, sometimes I'm worried that if they don't have a good experience, then it will make my relationship with them awkward, or it'll put a strain on it.
Okay? So we invite people, they don't come, or we want to invite people, but we feel that they won't. If they come, they are not going to even be assimilated into a group that they feel comfortable with. That now our relationship with them is going to be strained, and as we go back to work, and they're not going to look at us in a meaningful way as before, because now we crossed a boundary, an area where that we don't feel comfortable with the rejection. So we don't do it again. We don't invite anyone again. That's fine.
Maybe it's a reflection of how we ourselves view the church. If we don't like it, if we don't feel welcomed or at home, then why would we invite someone else?
Okay.
The other thing, I think that because of the world we live in, that talking about God in the open is, I mean, it's like you're not supposed to do that. You're infringing on people that disbelieve or don't want to believe, or believe and don't want to come to church. There's a I don't know whoever enacted that, but it's out there.
Okay. So it's like if I am trying to do something in my own desk or whatever, and I put some type of media there, people start to react different. They think we're going to be proselytizing, so they start to shy away from me and so forth. This one. Okay. If you notice a decline in our numbers of first-time guests and an increased discussion of the inward things that we're doing, focusing on programs of the church, inside the church, we got to become aware. We got to. That's a little bit of a warning sign. If all our programs are inward instead of outward, we are coming to befall into the victim of what we call the sharing barrier. The sharing barrier is that we only want to do things within our group. We don't want to share what we're doing with the outside people. And for a long time, I saw that was what we were doing. And even in our church, we had a lot of things that were for inside the church, but the community was being left out. And that sharing barrier is sometimes what causes a lot of people not to invite. Church growth researchers have found that healthy, growing churches will have a ratio, and listen to this, 5 first-time guests for every 100 attenders. If our church has 100 members, we should have 5 first-time guests every Sabbath here. And that's what the research has shown. And so let's say if we have 150 here, at least 7 people to 8 should be first-time guests here. Gary, how many guests we have usually first-time visitors at our church?
It varies, but it's less than that. 2 to 4 maybe.
Okay. So we have to watch out this ratio. And I know that for the churches that are not Sabbath keepers, it's a little bit more the ratio is more or less kept up with that, 5 to 100. But because we worship on Sabbath, and a lot of people have already a lot of things going on Sabbath, we tend to have less first-time guests than other churches. Now, the reason you attend to church is that somewhere along the line, someone invited you. Or you received a package, an email, a flyer, that invited you to come to the church. The person that has done that, if either it's a personal invitation, they go through different types of risks. A risk of getting out of their shell and trying to invite others, but also it's a risk that they will tell you, no, I'm not coming, and you feel rejected. It's also another risk that the people, as they receive this invitation, the risk that they're taking is, what will happen to me on that visitation of that church there? What will happen to me? There can be positive risks, like, okay, I like the community there, I like the fellowship. The other thing is, I'm going to risk that I'm going to change my ways of living. So people sometimes don't feel that they can come to church because there's going to be a risk of change. But many people have come to the churches and have a change of their lives because they found Jesus in their lives and they heard about him, and so they were able to get that change that they were looking for. Okay, so fears about relationship changing. What if they think that we're weird? What about the friendship that we have? Is it going to spoil? So how do I know that it is time to take a risk? How do I know that it is a time to take a risk to invite someone? There are various clues that you can hear from individuals that will tell you when is it time to take a risk to invite people. The first thing I would like you to remember is that when you hear something like, things are not going well, that is a clue for you to say, okay, I'm going to step up and I'm going to invite this individual. The other clue is, I'm not prepared for whatever it is. He might have lost a loved one. He might have lost his job. He might have lost certain opportunities that he was looking forward to. I'm not prepared for this. And that's an opportunity for you to invite that individual to come to church. Or the third one is, I am not from here. We just moved into the area. That should be a big one for us. Because individuals that are moving in, that are fairly new, you have the opportunity to say, you know what, I go to this church here. I'd like you to come with me. I invite you to my church. It meets on Sabbath morning at 9:30 or 11 o'clock or 10:40, whatever the time is. So those are three clues that we have as we go and move forward to invite individuals. When you hear any of these, you know that it's worth taking a risk. And often the person who says these things is searching for something. They may not know that they're searching actually for Jesus, but that's what they are searching, a need of someone to help them through these crises and through these situations. Another way that we can find out that it's time to invite another individual is to know what the pastor is preaching and finding someone that can benefit from that. See this series of leadership and so forth, and how we as Christians have to do with being a leader in our Christian life is good. But possible one day the pastor says, okay, we're going to have a series on marriage and family. If you know someone that is going through a problem, a crisis in their home and with the marriage and so forth, that is a time to come and invite the pastor. Or what if a person, it might be a series on apologetics, and you have a friend that loves to argue about religion and has questions about who Jesus is or what about Christianity and so forth. That is a time for an individual to start looking out for individuals that can benefit from those series and those themes. So, how do I invite someone to church, or how do we create a culture? Let's go, first of all, how do we invite a person to church? First of all, you can call them, you can text them, you can email them, you can share a Facebook event page, talk to them, hand out an invite card, or take them out to lunch afterward to answer some questions that they may have looming around in their minds and their hearts. These are all different methods that we can reach individuals and talk to them as well. But be sure when you bring them to introduce them to people, especially introduce them to your pastor. Introduce them to people that are there that you know that can have a connection with them. If you bring a person that is a nurse or in the medical field, make sure you find someone that is in that same field that could have that connection. If you find an individual that is different ethnic background, reach out to an individual that has that compatibility, that connection that they can make, because the more connections that we get to make with those individuals that come in, the easier for them to say, okay, I like that church, I'm going to come back. Okay? So how do we create a culture of inviting? I want to share with you probably a hypothetical example. Someone attending our church for about a month. I asked her how she began attending our church, and her response is that a friend of hers who had been attending this church for a long time consistently have been inviting her to church, and they found many times an excuse to tell her that no, she couldn't come. And after a particularly hard session in her life, she finally decided that it was time to check out this church that her friend had been telling her for the longest time that changed her life. Not only invited her, saying, okay, this is the church I go to, but she was inviting her to this church that really changed her life when she came to that church. 1 month later, she says that she just came to see and has not left the church since that first time that she came in. She says that the church was helping her to deal greatly with the wound that she was living with, her experience that she had that brought her to church. I like to hear those type of stories, because we know when there's a life-changing situation in a person's life, and the church has been the instrument to help make that change there. Those are beautiful stories, and we need to hear them more. Now, the key to this story was that how her friend consistently invited her to come to church. She refused many times, but she kept on pressing. She kept on inviting. She did not feel that, okay, I'm giving up on this individual. God used her friend in a simple but powerful habit of inviting. And that's what we need to try to get our church to do. One of the most powerful things that happens in the life of a believer or a churchgoer is when they invite someone to church. And that person actually comes and they have a change of life. Their life has been changed. One of the things that, the joys of being a pastor, And TJ will continue to experience that more and more as he continues the journey as a pastor, is the joy to have an individual that was invited by one of the members or so, to be able to see that change, and the joy that not only the person receives, but when they brought him, and the pastor's joy to be able to baptize them. That's one of the greatest joy. That's one of the things that I miss most when I was in the military as a chaplain. Being able to get those individuals that accepted Jesus and life-changing experiences, and be able to baptize them. That's a great joy, not only for a minister, but also they say that Spirit of Prophecy tells us that there's joy in heaven for everyone that gives their life to Jesus. Now, there's a lot of things that we use these days to invite people, but the most powerful invitation, the most powerful of them all, is when you have a one-to-one personal contact. Every church has their own different cultures that defines their behaviors. And this is why the culture of our church is so vital. If we want to a culture that where guests consistently show up at our church, then we need to invest in that habit of inviting. And that's something that I feel that we as a church need to work on quite a bit more. We need to find a habit that can galvanize our values and what we do as a church, and tie it back to our mission and vision of the church. Our mission of the church is what? Knowing Jesus, reflecting his character, sharing his message. If we can get this habit of inviting and changing that culture that ties into this mission, then we're able to get people more and more involved in inviting. The keystone habit I would like to suggest for our church is create a habit of inviting people from all walks of life that would like to know Jesus. So if you know of an individual that is along that line there, invite him to come walk with Jesus and know Jesus. Fellowship with people that reflect Jesus' character, and then also learn Jesus' message. It's all about Jesus. And if we can get our people just in love with our mission and tie it down to the habit of inviting people, it would be a lot of things, good things will happen. As I said before, word of mouth inviting are more powerful than the best crafted Facebook or mailer campaign that we can have. There are three things that I'd like to share with you that create a culture of inviting. We need to make it easy for our people to invite others. We're going to provide tools, and that's what the purpose of this seminar is, to provide tools for our church members so that they can use into making, doing invitations. Teach people how. One way to teach this is to teach cues. If we want to create a habit of inviting in our church, there are three things that we can implement in our church. We need to look at these cues. Before I mention about clues, but these are cues when talking to others. And I'm going to call these the three not cues. Things are not going well. When people are telling you things are not going well, this is an opportunity for you to invite. I was not prepared for it. I am not from here. These are the not cues that will help you, like my professor used to tell us, stick out your antennas and say, okay, wait a second, I got to pay attention to this individual. When one of these cues is mentioned, it should trigger the person to invite them to church. Take time teaching these to our people is an important task that we have as leaders of our church. as a super effective way to create a habit of inviting. And then we go to the celebration part. That's the third point of these, is how to create a culture of inviting. I guess you guys have heard once, and it has been repeated so many times, millions of times, what gets celebrated gets repeated. If we celebrate an event, like people coming to church and just knowing that they've been able to have a life-changing situation in their lives, we need to celebrate that. When Marcus brings his daughter or his son, whoever he brings, we need to celebrate that, not only personally, but also corporately. In the platform, the elder in charge should be able to celebrate that person coming into the church, and celebrate also that Marcus did that effort to invite another individual, and just having that celebration of that culture of inviting others. Ask people when they attend how they heard about our church. And probably, Gary, you have a lot of that first knowledge of individuals. How did they come to the church? When a great story comes along, we need to share that. We need to share that with our church. When someone invites someone and they show up, celebrate that corporately and personally, as I mentioned. If we take time to celebrate a habit of inviting in the church, not only will our church grow numerically, but it will also grow in faith as well as maturity. And on the long run, the person that comes in and stays in the church, our church will benefit financially as well. So there's a lot of benefits of inviting. The truth is, people will naturally talk about something they are really excited about. How many of us remember when we were about 15 years old? You remember? For some of us, it's been a long time ago. For TJ, it's been a lot less. You don't have to encourage a 15-year-old girl to talk about her new boyfriend, don't we? More often than not, you're asking her to stop talking about it so much. But that's the same way as that we should feel to invite individuals. That same enthusiasm. Okay, well, there's some ways to encourage our church. And I am going to give you, someone, TJ or someone can help me pass out these handouts. I'm not going to go one by one of these points there. I'm wanting you to have these. And if you have any questions later on, we can answer those as well. But these are ways that we can equip our church members to invite someone. One of the things that I really believe in is that, I got some more, TJ, if you need any more.
We're good.
If we continue to repeat things quite often, people will tune us out. So many times we have to stop asking people every single week to invite people to church. Instead of a small mention each week, we need to devote a little amount of time to talk about inviting. Probably leave 2 or 3 weeks without talking about it, but then come back with a big push. Let's say if we could establish, and I talked to TJ about it, if we establish a day, a Sabbath that we call just basically guest Sabbath, a special guest Sabbath day. In other words, That's a day that the pastor's sermon is going to be revolving around the guests. A very powerful Jesus-centered message. And there's going to be a special fellowship dinner for that. There's going to be guest musicians coming in. It's going to be a big celebration for the guests' Sabbath day. And that way, if we do it quarterly or so, we can have the members of the church continue to visit with their friends and bring them to church and let them know that this is a big thing for a church. Print up a bunch of invite cards. We have those cards already in the foyer. We can take some, put them in the windshields of the cars there. We can give it to our friends, put them in doctor's office, do a whole bunch of things with those little invite cards that people are not taking advantage of. It has our information on those cards there, and we don't have to talk very much. Just hand out those little invite cards to people. Write up a bunch of social media posts, and also our media people, our communication department there. Every event that we have, even for Sabbath events, they put on these clips there about what's going to happen this Sabbath. Pastor TJ is going to preach on a leadership series, or there's going to be a What's Your Story, or whatever it is. And we need to get those little events that are posted on Facebook or in our webpage and whatever, and send it out to others so that they can come. Many times we just read those and, okay, that's good. It's good information for us. But the great majority of the time that we would like to see happening is that we can use those and forward them to those friends of ours that we have. We want to make it easier for people to do something. You got about 19 different areas that are important for us that helps us to equip our members in inviting. One of the things that, I'm going to talk about it just in a short bit, but one of the things that we'd like to see happening is that people that come in through the church there, that they can feel welcome. And we'll be establishing the Welcome Center with very well sign there that says Welcome Center, and a table with different packets that people can take with them. But there's so many different ways that we can use to bring people and let them know that there's something going on in our church. Take a look at all those 19 there, and there's so many opportunities for us. And I'd like to share this here with all the congregation so that they know that there's opportunities. I'm going to be doing that every so often during the personal ministries, either Sabbath or the church life as well. One of the things is that we never know when a simple invite can change the life of an individual. So hopefully your life has changed because someone from the church invited you. And this is a chance to change someone else's life and eternity as they come to know Jesus, they will be changed as well. Okay, I'm going to go rapidly to the retention area. That was a part of inviting people. But now I'd like to speak more towards how do we retain those guests that come to a church. Reaching and keeping visitors or guest checklist. Okay. Let me see if I got back here. Okay, there's characteristics of a dynamic church. What are some of the characteristics of a dynamic church? First of all, a dynamic church is intentional about reaching new people. That's one thing that a dynamic church really has, their intentionality. They don't leave it for a chance. They don't say, okay, we built a brand new church, house of worship here, and we have a good sign in the front yard there. Now it's their responsibility to come to church because we put the church here. It didn't cost them anything. Now it's their time to come to church. Wrong. Intentionality about reaching new people. And that's a culture change that we need to have in our church, of inviting others. They're also about connecting people to the life of the church. If there's something that's going on in our church, we need to help people know that this is what's happening in our church. Oh, we have an interactive prayer journey. It's our opportunity to bring them to the church so that they can have certain connection and probably benefit from this journey that probably they've never taken in their life. So there's things in our church that people need to be connected to, and a dynamic church takes that opportunity to change, to connect with people and bring them to the church. They're also about connecting people to a personal relationship with Christ. And that should be our focus, prime focus in inviting people. It's okay to come and connect with the people of the church here and the different activities, but the foremost and most important thing is have people be able to connect with Jesus Christ. If we can focus on that in our sermons, in our conversations, and in our personal relationships, that we can bring all that to fruition, that Jesus is the center of why we come to church and why we have this relationship with Him. Some processes to make sure everyone feels welcome and no one is overlooked. That's a big situation for us, and we need to learn about these processes. And I've got about, I don't remember how many I wrote there, but quite a few, about 9 or 10. Assimilation starts in the parking lot, and that's where we will begin. If we want to have a good connection, we want to have a good opportunity for that person to come back to the church, is going to start in the parking lot. I don't know how many of you have gone to different larger churches in the area, but these individuals are going down with a little golf cart and roaming around the parking lots. They've got big parking lots or whatever. And they're out there and they're inviting people, hop on the golf cart, and we'll take you to the front entrance. Especially those that have a lot more different entrances than we have. We have one main entrance here. That's not a big issue. If we would have 2 or 3 other entrances, then we need individuals in the parking lot to show them where to go and introduce them to the greeters. But the parking lot is important. As people drive in, what do they see? Not only our signs, but also how is our parking lot? Is there a reserved place for me to be able to park here? One of the things that we had in the other church, and we forgot to do that when we built the church parking lot, was a specific place for guests, especially first-time guests. I go to different opportunities, events at the Crossings Church, and they have a place specifically for first-time guests. And it makes it, they don't have to be scrounging around looking for parking spaces. They're right there. They know, they can see the sign there, and you go there and park. But anyway, there's a lot of things that happen in the parking lot. That's called, we should call them the parking lot ministry. People that come into this campus, they will decide if they're going to come back to church within the first 6 to 10 minutes as they come in. If they can't find a place to park, they're going to go. Signage is important, and not only the big sign outside, but also a good sign in the foyer, in the gathering place for the first-time visitors and first-time guests. Registration card is another one. I would like to see, and Chris, if we can get this to work, that would be fantastic, and Pastor TJ. Instead of having only the physical connection card, have it digital with a tablet where they can come in and you give them the tablet here. There's already preloaded information that you were looking for, and they go in there and sign that digitally. We can get that into a database and be able to reach out to them a lot easier than the little physical connection card that we have. But anyway, first-time guest registration is important. Then we have the greeters and the super greeters. Most churches in Edmond, our church here in Edmond is a model of this here. Most churches are utilizing a team of greeters. Those people are quick to smile and give a handshake and can point to the people in the general direction. But dynamic churches, okay, let me get this here. Dynamic churches incorporate what we call the super greeters. The super greeters are those individuals that have a very special characteristics and responsibilities as people come into the church. They're super friendly, they're super nice, super knowledgeable. They can escort the visiting family to where the children need to go to, introduce them to the teacher, explain to them the pickup process, show them where the restrooms are, show them where the guests, show the guests to the worship center, and help them locate a seat. They introduce them to the other super greeters. That's the job of these super greeters. After the greeters in the front door there have shake their hands and smile at them and welcome them, then it's the responsibility of the super greeters to do the rest and be able to start the connection with them. Now, everyone in our church is part of this welcome team. The welcoming doesn't end there with the super greeters. Every individual in the church has a responsibility. A person comes to the church and he sits next to you. It's our responsibility to greet them and let them know that you're very glad to see them in church and be able to have that in connection with them. One of the things that we like to do, and it's important for us to do, is to be able to connect with our audience as we speak to them, be it elders or be it the pastor. We need to help them have a welcoming mindset. Many times as we do our announcements and so forth, we come up with certain types of names or wordings of projects that we have, and the visitors do not have any type of notion of what these things are that we're talking about. If there's a Pathfinder Bible ball,
What's Bible ball?
What's a Bible ball? What's a Pathfinder?
Adventist lingo.
So when a guest comes in, we need to say, okay, Pathfinders are those children from such and such age to such and such age. Have you heard about the Boy Scout and all these different? Well, this is our version of that type, but more on the spiritual level and so forth. And a Bible ball, oh yeah, that's when we have some like Bible trivia questions or whatever it is, and we have these opportunities to compete with other people and from other churches and so forth. So we need to explain a little bit more about these events that we are talking about, because guests have no idea. So it goes beyond the stand up and shake hands portion of the service. Welcome strategy. It's another one. Welcoming strategy. Well, the church should be aware of guests. The greeting team is on the front lines when it comes to the first-time guests. Our greeters strategically placed in the different areas of the church, in the different doors and different areas. Many times people tend to leave through these side doors, but if we have a greeter, a super greeter in all these areas here, they won't leave unnoticed. Are they recognizable and approachable? Are they equipped and knowledgeable about the ministries of the church? See, the super greeters need to have all these type of qualities and characteristics so that they can be able to help those guests that come into the church. Do they represent the demographics of the church? If we're tending to look into getting more millennials or more younger people than us five, we need to start getting greeters that are more along the line of the millennials and even youngsters that are capable of doing that. Because then they will have that connection. If our demographics tells us, and it does, that the mean age of our population here is about 36 to 40, was it 45, TJ, around that? Yeah. The average age? Well, we need to get people to start greeting those individuals well along that age frame so that they can have that be able to connect and to be able to have some similar likes. And one thing that really is one of my pet peeves is, are we communicating goodbye as well as hello? You've noticed, and I don't know, I haven't told anyone, but that's something that I do. Might have noticed that every time the pastor finishes his prayer, I'm rushing out through that door there, and I'm standing in the door over there as people leave. Because I want to say to them goodbye, good to have you here, please come back again, and so forth. It's important for us to say a good welcome, but also it's important for us to say a very good goodbye, see you next Sabbath, and so forth. Have a wonderful, beautiful Sabbath day. So that's important as well. Okay. Good first impressions make sense. So look, are the worship gathering areas clean and clutter-free? I see papers like here. All these little things here need to be cleaned up. So as people come in, they don't see that there's things just lying around there. The floor's nicely swept or whatever. So that goes along with not only the area, the parking lot, the gathering center, the worship center, also the bathrooms. How are they? First impressions count quite a bit. Then listen. Are the areas where some ambient music would enhance the welcome experience? Are there some areas where the background music is detracting from people's ability to connect with each other? The music might be too loud over there, and they can't, the greeters and super greeters can't connect with the guests or something. So we need to be aware of all these different things. Connection time. Sometimes we can be hypersensitive to those who want to remain anonymous. So we can't overlook the opportunities to really have some connection with them, with the people. How many different places or formats are available for visitors to obtain? And that's one of the things that we need to continue to work on. Last week, I put on the screen there all the different websites and opportunities that people can use to connect, keep connected with our church during the week. So these are some of the things that we can do, some of the formats that we use and that we can continue to use. The online, the web page, and so forth. Weekend bulletins and the worship guides, as we give it to people there, that they can take with them to know exactly what's going on in that week. Printed materials provided by the greeting team. That's why we want to have the welcome center, so that people can get some materials as they leave. They can get the materials that they need to stay connected with the leadership of the church and with the church. The welcome center. Do you provide a time and place for guests to connect? And that's something that we continue to do here at the church. We have time to greet those that are visiting and so forth. So capturing first-time guest information should be figured into each and every point of our ministries. Last impressions. Are you communicating goodbyes as well as hello? I already talked about that. Okay. Let me go back on this one here. We suggest that churches now to have what we call the after-service hosts. What are after-service hosts? Dr. Charles Arnn is a church growth researcher that has questioned over 50,000 churches about church guests over these past 10 years. And he mentions that this after-service host is not just a greeter who stands at the door and shakes people's hands on the way out or on the way in. These people are people that are in the sanctuary or in the worship service whose ministry begins when the last prayer ends. When that last prayer ends, the pastor or whoever's preaching, that's when these after-service hosts starts their responsibilities. And some of these are the responsibilities of these after-service hosts. Look for people who you don't recognize. If I'm an after-service host and I'm standing at that back door there and I see that there's a person that I don't recognize, and I see him as they come in, you're looking around and so forth, and you see the person that has a little welcome packet that Gary gives in as they come in. You know that's a first-time guest. As soon as that pastor ends his prayer, you go and approach that individual, and you start making that connection, that relationship with that person. Go up to that person, introduce yourself, and act as a host. When you're a host, what do? What does a host do when someone comes to your house or to a party that you're hosting?
Treat them as
Do the work.
special.
Treat them as special. Let them know where the bathrooms are. Let them know where the drinks are, or some type of nice little food, snacks, or whatever it is that you that's important for them to feel comfortable. You do it. So that's another thing that you need to do as a after-service host. Act like a host. And then you introduce them to the pastor. The pastor needs to know these people. The pastor would love to know these individuals that are first-time visitors. Because on the long run, if those individuals are needing some type of spiritual help or prayer or whatever, he would love to be part of that opportunity to share with them. Invite them to fellowship lunch. Don't leave them without that formal invitation. You know, we have a fellowship lunch this Sabbath here. I'd love to have you there. I can walk you to the fellowship area and so forth. So those are very important things for them to do. And really, in the sense of what we often think of a word of host, be a host. Regardless of how you greet the guest, following up the service, after service, or a church event is a huge part of building connections with the guests. So we need to develop also a response structure. Develop a response structure that guarantees follow-up with each first-time guest within the 48 hours of their visit. And this is huge. If we don't follow up within this 48 hours, the 48 hours of the initial contact are the most important to follow up. If we don't follow up by that time there, people will start to feel that we have no interest in them. A successful follow-up plan will include, I'm going to go back up a little bit. There's a 3-step follow-up formula. You gather information, that's what we like to do here, gather information. Then we start to connect with them. And then we build opportunities to start that type of relationship that we need. 23 billion text messages are sent each day. Text messages have a 98% open rate, while the 20% open rate for emails. So before I used to say, I'm not going to deal with the text messaging. I just don't know how it works and I don't like it. That was my mentality until about a couple of years ago. Now I find myself texting more than emailing. And it's because 98% rate of someone opening that text and reading the text versus the email. Because you got that on your hands all the time, on your pocket, and that's why you're able to respond more on text messages than emails. The fact is, and Gary, this is an important thing so that we don't get disappointed or disheartened. Only 10% of guests return. And that's based on research. Only 10% of the guests return. Why do people come to church? Reasons why we have first-time guests are these: death, divorce, displacement, disaster. Which is the number one of all these here? Which is the number one reason that of all these 4 that people first come to church? What do you think? We got death, we got divorce, we got displacement, and disaster. Which one of these 4 is one of the main reasons why people come to church?
I guess divorce.
Divorce?
I guess divorce.
Any other ideas?
Displacement, is that just moving in general?
Displacement? Any other ideas? Got only 2 left after those 2.
Divorce too.
Huh? Divorce.
Divorce.
Would it be surprising for you to know that it's death?
Oh, really?
Death? The death event is, and just imagine, you got a church member here that dies just recently after a death situation from our church. What happened?
The family is children.
Individuals that would never come to church came because their father or their mother or a very close person died, and they want to show up with their compassion and just, so a lot of these individuals first come here because of death. And then, yes, we have all these others as well.
That's not a very encouraging thought that
Have someone die?
to get new people here is there's some kind of death in the family. Yeah?
No.
It's not something you pray for.
No, we don't pray for that and we don't encourage it, but that's reality. I can tell you, I remember one person that I was just building a brand new church back in the island in Puerto Rico. And these individuals I had never seen them before. But when their mother died, I mean, we hadn't even put the pews in the church. I haven't done in the floor of the church. It was just bare cement, whatever. And the family wanted to bring her to the church. So we brought her to the church. With everything was just so bare. We had just had the bricks and the roof and so forth. And we had that funeral service in the church. Guess what? Till this day, those individuals, the son and family members, daughters that came to the funeral there, those individuals now are the leaders of that church. Just because their mother was a member of the church and died, they decided to come to the church. And what they saw in the love and the warmth of the church that embraced them as they came to the funeral service caused a tremendous impression on them that they decided to continue to visit the church and finally baptize, and now they're leaders of the church. Okay, one of the mistakes that we do as church is that we don't obsess over the guest's experience. You know what the guests look first? Those that want to come to the church, you know what they look first? Our website, the church website. They're in town for whatever reason, or they're just passing by, whatever it is, they check at the church website. I mean, when I go to Dallas and I want to go to a Spanish-speaking church, I go into the different websites of the churches there, and if something attracts me about that church there, if they have all the usual things like we used to have before in all the different churches, that was just from the General Conference or the NAD, very generic website, I said, I don't think I would want to go there. But if I find something that is different and attractive, then I said, okay, I'll look into that. So church website. Then our worship service, our worship experience. If our worship experience is awesome, those individuals will come back. So we need to obsess with what our church website looks like, and Chris does a fantastic job. And our worship experience, we try to get that worship experience, and we can continue to improve in that worship experience. And also the people. The people need to be that friendly group of that warmth, the fellowship that we can provide to them, that greetings, that love sharing type of experience with them is something that we need to continue to work on. I would suggest that for us, we come in with open eyes, fresh look at things. What does our church sign look like? Does it need painting? Does it need to be mowed? Or whatever it is. Good thing right now our church signs looks fantastic. Our landscapes looks good. What does our parking say about us? Do you have people pointing guests in the right direction? Do you have a welcome center to provide information and welcome packets? We need to continue to obsess with that. Another mistake that churches do is they fail to gather guests' contact information. And that's the only thing that we can go by to continue to make a connection with them. If we don't have that contact information, we lose a lot of opportunities to connect with them. And I mentioned that just a while ago. Do you know the number one reason why people don't give out their contact information?
They don't want to get spam mail.
They don't want to get spam mail? Any other ideas? Number one reason why people do not usually want to give out their information.
They don't want someone to show up at their door unannounced.
Okay. Number one reason is trust. It's trust. If they don't trust us, they will not give that information. So how do we get their trust? How can we work to get their trust? We talk to them. We connect with the guests through telling stories. Tell them how you came to this particular church. Tell them what made you come back and stay here at the Edmond Church. Marcus can tell a whole bunch of stories about that. For how long have you been here at this church? See, all this information that you can provide to this brand new guest will tell something about you, and they will start to open up and say, well, wow, this guy is for real. I can trust him with some information that I'm going to give. Because you're being real, you're being personal with this individual, and they can say, okay, I can start to trust him. What is it that you desire for the guests? You know, tell them about how was your experience in finding Jesus and changing your life. And says, that's what I have is that I would like to have you experience that as well. Tell them what you desire for that guest. Send guests information about the church. Give them some information. We have packets that we give to to the newcomers, to the first guest visitors, about our church, and gives us a little bit of ideal information about our church. Can you build enough trust that people will fill out the connection card? And then we need to create a welcome rotation. They don't need to just hear Gary 2, 3, 4 times. They need to hear from others as well. Heather, myself, Janine, whatever it is, have a welcome rotation so that people can start to know more than just one person. Another mistake that churches do is that they don't have a follow-up thoroughly with guests. They come in through those doors and they leave, and we don't contact with them. And sometimes even if we do contact them, they do not respond. But if they do respond, it's our responsibility to respond back to their thanks or whatever. It's not our church responsibility to tell the folks what communication channels they prefer. We need to have a various types of communication channels open for them. And this is what I suggest that we do. Call them. Let them know that you care. You may think phone calls are old news, but everyone prefers differently. So you don't know if this person that we're calling that's their preferred way of communicating. And we don't want to miss out on that. Okay? You may call them and they will not answer because they don't know your phone number and they don't know who's calling them. But you leave them a voice message in their answering machine, and they'll go there and check it out and says, well, someone from the Edmond Church called me. Oh, that's nice. You thank them for coming back, and you thank them for joining them on that Sabbath and coming back. Hopefully they can come back next Sabbath and make one or call or 2 additional calls in the first 6 weeks. And I'm going to show you a calendar for that. But I guess I said before, I said try switching up for each call with another individual. Then we got email. Although the percentage of emails read and responded to are less than text messages, they're still extremely important and powerful. 1 or 2 emails per week for the first 6 weeks is ideal. Text them. Simple, relevant, and friendly. Texting is one of the most powerful ways, I said before. So we could send them one text per week for the first 6 weeks after the guest visits our church. Text is great, but we got to be careful that we don't overdo it. Mail them, write them a little special note, personal note, send them a postcard, better yet, a handwritten note on Monday or Tuesday after they have visit us for first time. It's a small gesture with a big impact. I know that when I'm out and Marie sends me a postcard, that means something to me. I like that because it tells me that I was missed, that she noticed that I was gone. And that postcard, that writing to that individual there makes a tremendous impact. Now, this is not a time to send them a newsletter if we would have a newsletter church, because newsletters are basically for those that are members of the church and so forth. A fourth mistake that we do is not having a clear next step for guests. Technology does not replace human interaction. Technology facilitates human interaction. So we need to follow up with all the different ways that we can. Before we thought that, okay, a 10-day follow-up was enough for the visitors. I'm not going to bother them anymore more than the first 10 days. But the research has found that 6 weeks follow-up system is the best system. And you can't see that very well, but you can see the little icons there where we can okay, I thought I had that on my okay. We have different ways of communicating for them. The first, we got on top level, it has the first week, second week, third week, fourth week, fifth week, 6 weeks. So we email them, we call them, we write to them a little postcard. We also want to email again, and then we got the text. It's important for us to, and I should probably give you all a sample of these here. It's important for us to do all these on the first week there so that they realize that there is some joy that we had to have them in the church, and I'd like to invite them back again. On Fridays, if we can connect with them via text, they will start to make plans for Sabbath. Okay, they've been calling me here, they've been writing to me, they again text me on Friday, you know, I should probably check them out next Sabbath. And then on the second week, we do another email or text or whatever. I can't see it from here, I'm getting blind here. And yeah, text them and email them and so forth. So there's a six weeks of ways that we should probably be following up on these individuals that come to our church. That way they feel that they have not been left out and blank, and we don't care for them. That's what they'll think. But with this here, we can connect with them, continue to connect with them, and be able to let them know that, hey, yes, we're interested in for you to come back. And for my last slide is making visitor follow-up a high priority means high tech, high touch must be important to you in our church, to us, all of us. We need to not only have this connection with the technology, but also personal touch, personal experiences, being out with them, being able to communicate with them as they come to the church. I can't stress enough that there's so many ways that we can do follow-up. There's so many ways that we can make people comfortable and reach out to them. And our church needs to make a habit of using all those type of tools and opportunities that we have provided. Okay. That's all I have for you tonight.